Feels good to be back here in New England. I am admittedly a Providence College graduate. Go PC. Last night, unfortunately, Providence lost in the NIT to Boston College. Do we have any Boston College grads here? All right, fair enough. Our title of our spotlight is Walk the Walk, so I wanted to make sure that I walk the walk and point out when there are imperfections in my fanship there. So appreciate Boston College for outing us and ending our season. I think it's fair to say that I am suffering from feel like crap syndrome that Parsley Health so eloquently outlined. As mentioned, my name is Ryan Kellogg. This is a KO. We are Talkspace. We are your leading virtual health mental health care provider. Today's session, and it was eloquently pointed out, we are the grand finale. So today's session is going to be more of a fireside chat about different observations that we're making within Talkspace, different measures that we're taking to make sure that we're good shepherds of our employees' mental health care, as well as observations that we're making in the industry from our customers and the like. So I'll get right into it. KO. So it feels like the pandemic is roughly 2 years removed. I think we can all agree that the pandemic served as a tipping point for the need for mental health care. It went from a nice to have to a need to have. But I'm concerned, is that, in your observations, is that still the case? Do you feel like leaders and managers and employees still prioritize the need for mental health in their organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an amazing question. And because I'm a middle school teacher by background, no longer, I did want to start with a poll to the audience or the class. So just by a show of hands, how many people here were having conversations about mental health org-wide before the pandemic started? So just raise your hand at your organization. This makes sense. It's a pretty progressive group. That's why we're here, right? And how many people are having conversations org-wide about mental health now? Almost everyone. I love that. So I do think this is a conversation that, of course, started before the pandemic. I remember reading an incredible article around 2018, 2019 in the Harvard Business Review about celebrities like Lady Gaga and The Rock and Prince Harry had been openly discussing PTSD and anxiety and depression, and it was pointing towards a new normalization of those conversations coming into the workplace. But what we see now is that the pandemic was, of course, a moment when people reevaluated their careers, their relationship to work and the economy, their definition of work-life balance and what that could possibly mean. And so now in my work at Talkspace, I oversee talent acquisition and then talent, engagement and retention. And on the talent acquisition side, I have never seen more candidates just explicitly tell me that this is what they're looking for, that they're looking for an organization that provides work-life balance. And when we dig into that, what that looks like now more than ever is flexibility. I think previously it meant like work, you're doing work, life, you're doing life. You're almost like a Clark Kent, like wearing two different personas. Now it means an intermingling and a flexibility. And that they're looking for places that are talking about mental health and that are explicitly providing mental health services because it's just so important in this day and age.
I completely agree. Observations that I've made across the board, I look at this as an opportunity, this current gap. This is an opportunity for us to bridge that gap from that feeling that we had during the pandemic to real time. And how we've done that at Talkspace and what we're very passionate about is customizing and catering what we're providing our employees and our customers through our virtual mental health options. And to me, it's a 360-degree environment. It's no longer, here is our service, go leverage it and communicate to them. And if they want to consume it, great. You really have to step inside the arena with your employees to make sure that they're digesting that information and we're catering to them. It's also a time of immediate gratification. So if I feel this morning that I need a mental health solution it's important for me to be able to address that real time and potentially pair up with a licensed therapist within hours or days of that moment to educate employees to make sure that they know that those resources are particularly available. Diversity is a huge topic of discussion right now. What are we doing to ensure that we are providing mental health care to the masses? As KO said, when we have employees that are looking to be recruited at Talkspace, can we address their unique needs through our diverse mental health team? So we have over 5,000 different licensed therapists across 50 different states that have a very diverse background. 40% of our therapists are specialized in LGBTQ topics. 40% of our therapists focus on adolescent care. 30% of our therapists focus on BIPOC or identify as BIPOC. And then 35 different languages are represented. That's very deliberate to ensure that if your employee is looking for mental health care, we're treating that employee as the individual they are and providing as many different resources to them as possible. And I truly believe that that is the mindset that we have to move forward. Not everyone's mental health journey is the same. It's different depending on the season that you're in, and you need to be able to adjust and be all-encompassing to those employees. All right, speaking of all-encompassing, as we are moving forward, a current day and age, there's a lot of uncertainty. I mentioned feeling in the morning that you need mental health solutions and needing that, that given day. Organizations go through a lot of change. We work really, really hard to communicate. Nonetheless, people hear things differently. And what you tell one employee might be different from another. You might tell a large group and then survey them after, and their interpretation is different of what you've said. So it's important that you take the specific steps to make sure that you're putting psychological safety nets in place so that you can reassure your employees throughout their employment with your organization that they feel comfortable, that they're in the best position to be the best version of themselves. All that being said, KO, can you share with the group what we target at Talkspace to make sure that people are the best version of themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think especially during these times of deep change, so that could look like restructuring, layoffs, or just macroeconomic trends that are changing. What we focus on is, of course, communication. That is the root of psychological safety, whether it's between two individuals or if it's between 6,000 people at a company. And so what that looks like at Talkspace and what it means to me personally is that we have communication structures that interweave with one another and that are very, very consistent. So for example, we have all hands at Talkspace. I don't think that's a revolutionary concept, but I love the way that we do it and the way that we do it consistently, no matter what's going on at the organization. So it's every 2 weeks. It starts the same way, usually with a video as people mill in, some words from our leaders, and then we have deep dives into different components of the organization. And I think that last part is actually the most important because we know when people are feeling concerned about the company or disconnected, they can start to feel powerless and a little bit like they're operating within some sort of black box. And being able to see what other parts of the company are doing and the wins and the progress and all of the good work that's still being accomplished can help them feel keyed in to the larger organization. And then of course that's layered with our OKRs are transparent to everyone, so you can look across the OKRs and see what's upcoming, which I think is really, really important. We have quarterly check-ins, and then we train our managers to have authentic one-on-ones that are consistent. We want people to know when they're coming. We want people to know that there's an agenda. We want there to be two-way feedback, and we want that to be a moment where people can be real with one another and express their concerns. And just to add one more specific example of what I do with my team, which is a little nerdy, but I love it, and I'm a nerd, is we're a public company, so we have earnings calls. My team is primarily recruiters and HR professionals, so sometimes those earning calls are quite technical. But what I like to do is I mandate that everybody listens to them, and then we talk through it afterwards, and we debrief, and we do the, there's no dumb questions. Please ask me more about what this earnings call might mean to you. Let's figure out how each of us fits into this organization. And we're not going to gloss over the hard times. I think it's really, really important to acknowledge that when there's any kind of deep change. But keeping that consistency and keeping that open communication is so, so important.
Yeah, to echo what you just said, what has always motivated me is feeling as if I am part of something bigger than myself. So challenging ourselves as people leaders to make sure that we're very clear with what our employees' piece of the puzzle looks like and how does it fit into the greater good of what they're currently doing. I've led different teams over my career, and it's amazing how when you look across the landscape amongst your company, you feel as if you're doing a great job communicating. And I've learned the hard way that just because I put out information and I'm very deliberate and I look people in the eye and I have good conversations doesn't necessarily mean that people feel appreciated and understand exactly what that role they play in their organization. So I call it going to ground and literally getting on a team meeting where you might be 2 layers down to your direct reports and having good conversations, being there in person, sitting in the bunker with them. I'm an Army vet, so I apologize for the military speak, but it's important. I think rubbing elbows with every layer of your chain of command breeds trust, breeds confidence, and makes people feel, one, valued, but seen, empowered, and heard, which I think are buzzwords that are the easiest things to neglect as a leader as the day-to-day happens and the email waterfall starts to ripple and gain momentum. Getting in front of that now to make sure that the employee understands that you do care about them, I think goes a long way.
And one more piece, you mentioned sometimes we have these, what we feel are great conversations, and then there's a disconnect, right? Or the employees are not necessarily feeling the way that we think they feel. I love a good survey. We recently partnered with Cranes, which has a very rigorous methodology for employee surveys. We won top 100 companies to work for through their methodology, but it was also really helpful to see there were some components when we surveyed our employees through a third party where we felt like we were doing a great job in communicating certain things, and the employees really weren't hearing that message. And I mentioned communication, but it really is about being heard and being understood. So it's not the speaking part that's important, it's the what message is being understood. And that Cranes survey data and the survey data that we've gotten in the past has been so informative in helping us fill in those blind spots like you mentioned.
I'm with you. All right, let's talk about employee benefits. What are some employee benefits that at Talkspace we incorporate to drive that culture that we're looking for?
Well, first and foremost, we offer Talkspace. And I absolutely love the fact that we offer the whole suite of Talkspace services to all of our employees. I think it's important as the topic is walking the walk, but it's also been so meaningful for me personally and for my teams. I love working at a company where almost everybody, if not everyone, is in therapy and they're actively engaged in self-reflection and communication exercises. It's just been so meaningful. And that benefit does extend to dependents. And so I was talking to Ryan and I was like, I loved when we got our holiday boxes and it had like cocktails and candy, and I was able to share that with my family. It's really fun to get something from your employer and to be able to share it with the people that you love. I think it creates a really beautiful moment between yourself and those around you where you get to feel pride in your company. But what's even more important is offering something like therapy to them and being like, I can give you video sessions, texting, self-guided materials, couples counseling, and we can share that together and really grow. So the top benefit, in my opinion, that we offer to ourselves is our own product.
I hear you. I mentioned continuum of care, leveraging therapy from depending on what your acuity level looks like, whether it's building your mental health foundation to one-on-one therapy, to taking it a step further through medication management and psychiatry, are all things that we do at Talkspace, that we offer our employees, Another area that we pride ourselves in is taking a step back at the larger picture of that continuum of care. And over the past year, we've been very aggressive about partnering with different organizations that also focus on the well-being of their employees so that we can leverage their network and vice versa. They leverage our network to ensure that those resources are readily available to our employees. For example, let's go downstream a bit from what we might consider mental health care. That would be the primary care market and leveraging their suite of providers. It could also be substance abuse and leveraging those resources. Upstream might be brain health. There are so many different brain health organizations right now that are really growing considerably. And to be able to direct our network towards those resources is quite important. An area that we are specifically niching down on from a partnership standpoint is currently women's health and helping women from the entire spectrum of their life cycle to ensure that they are fully supported. Those are all things that we work to communicate to with our employees, and those are areas that we focus and try to offer to them. Another area that I'm super passionate about and Talkspace has really doubled down on recently for our employees, but also within the partners of our states and municipalities is education for mental health around the adolescent population. So identifying different types of school districts, higher education opportunities where you are creating content that is ages 13 to 17 applicable, and you're offering that not only to school districts across the country, but you're offering it to your dependents as well. One of the speakers earlier really focused on leveraging mental health resources, not only from your employees, but think about it as one arm's distance from them, and that's their dependents. Most often when I speak to our customers, I get a lot of questions about what about my dependents, and it's always about what about my youth. Being able to provide them a resource through your company's current mental health solution is a huge additive and something that we're very passionate about and we implement at Talkspace.
Absolutely.
Are there any low-cost advantages to Talkspace?
Yes, and I wrote a lot of these down and got so excited just thinking about them this morning because we use so many of them at Talkspace. One, again, back to communication, we use Slack. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to use all of the tools that we've invested in to speak to one another, but we use it in such a fun way to bring people together. I think one is just through really consistent shout outs, and those shout out channels get it's like blowing up my phone when someone shouts someone out, and I absolutely love that. The engagement's really high. We have a lot of channels. We have a lot of channels that are puns on Talkspace. So we have Dog Space, where people post pictures of their dogs. We have Walk Space, which is a channel that I created with my coworkers when I realized people were setting goals of going outside on a walk during the day. And we're pretty metrics driven. So I was like, if you go on a walk, post a photo or a video of the sky. And so now this is just a channel where people go outside, prioritize their mental health, and take a picture of the sky and post it. And we're holding each other accountable. We also have Donut, so that's basically we randomly pair people of different levels and they get a topic and they can discuss it. We give them a credit for purchasing a meal, and that's a pretty low cost but fun way to get people to engage. And then this one is, I think, the probably deepest and most important, and it's a culture of respect for other people's time. And that is a low cost or free benefit, maybe even cost savings benefit. Meetings start on time, and then we also are very respectful of people being out. So we have mental health days, we have PTO, and we have created a lot of parameters that say, at Talkspace, if someone is out, we want them to feel completely empowered to be offline, and we do not message them. And so a lot of work goes into making that possible. We have templates that you fill out before you go out of office so people know who to contact, so that people have systems. But I think that culture of respect for other people's time is just so important. And it's the first time in my career that I felt like I can really breathe when I'm taking a step back from work. And that's been so incredible. And then the last one I'll mention, because I know we're sort of at time, is we have been getting back into volunteering days. And I feel like that was much more of a thing, before the pandemic. But we did do one in real life where we did delivering meals. It was incredible. We also do it virtually. So there's virtual games that we play where the proceeds of the games go to organizations like Feeding America. And a lot of these opportunities are very, very low cost, but can have such a positive impact on people's mental health and really facilitate the sense of belonging.
For me, it's about mission and making sure that we're communicating the mission, which is free, right? How do you communicate the mission? How often are you communicating your company mission and distilling that down to the team mission and then the individual? And the other word I'll say is ownership. So if that individual takes ownership to the mission, so they're aware, so they have the mission, they're taking ownership to it, taking ownership to their attitude, taking ownership to the relationships that they have within their organization, and taking ownership to the accountability. So the accountability means, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? What are the metrics that are going to hold us accountable to that? If everyone in your organization are doing those three things and leveraging mental health to build that foundation, I think everyone can be better off for it. The conversations will be more constructive. The culture will start to rise up, and you'll move forward in a positive direction. Yeah. With that said, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.